Hi everyone, welcome again to Depth, Not Just Headlines with me, Deborah Anderson. Today we'll be looking at the most recent tweet put out on Twitter by President Donald Trump. As you can see on the screen, it says, well-run states should not be bailing out poorly run states, using coronavirus as the excuse. The elimination of sanctuary cities, payroll taxes, and perhaps capital gains taxes must be put on the table. Also, lawsuit indemnification and business deductions for restaurants and entertainment. Now, this tweet put out by the president has drawn scores of responses. Of course, some favorable, many of them not so favorable. So first thing we're going to be look at, right, is some of the issues that he highlighted there in this tweet. He spoke about capital gains. What exactly are capital gains? They are a profit from the sale of property or an investment, right? So how many states actually implement capital gains taxes? Or since more do it than those who don't, we'll just mention the states that do not offer capital gains taxes or charge capital gains taxes. And we're looking at Arkansas, Florida, Nevada, New Hampshire, South Dakota, Texas, and Washington. Oh, of course, there's Wyoming. But are any of those states that I mentioned just now states that actually are dependent on the government at this time or are looking for a bailout from the government, right? New York is not there at this point in time. New York is one of those states that actually needs a lot of help right now. But we also need to remember that New York was the most badly affected state, right, since the coronavirus pandemic came about. So what exactly is the president talking about? Is this a red state versus blue state issue, or is this like a real issue? Like, what is going on? A lot of people have been asking, what exactly does he mean? Like, their states are paying their federal taxes. And if a situation like this arises, why shouldn't they seek bailout? Why should they? He's pointing out, which he had done before, that a lot of these states, it's due to mismanagement and not necessarily the pandemic, why they're now faced with the financial issues that they're faced with. But is that really the case? Which states actually rely most on federal aid, right? And we look at Massachusetts, right, is number 37 and it's 27.8%, right? So federal aid we're talking about as a percentage of state general revenue, right? And we're looking at Massachusetts is 27.8%, right? We have 34.7% here for Rhode Island. Connecticut, we have 24.6%. New Jersey, 27.3%. Delaware, 26.7%. And Maryland, 29.4%, right? And a lot of these states were badly hit. We could mention Hawaii of 24.8%. They're at number 46. Now, these are some of the states that are generally not, totally dependent on the government. But at this point in time, they are badly impacted. They're losing revenue. They had to go on lockdown from early, specifically New York, right? And New York contributes what, 22 point something. So let's just put it at an average $22 billion to the federal government on an annual basis. So if they're seeking bailout at this point in time, put aside red state or blue state, should that matter? Should these situations, as a matter of fact, be brought to light at this point when people are suffering, when people are hurting? Why not address these matters after the pandemic, right, has dissipated, after the virus has slowed down, after we've reached the bottom of the curve? isn't it too insensitive to be hitting out at states, whether rich or poor, at this point in time? And that's the question that's being asked by many people. Like, why is the president constantly hitting out at states and management? And why is he tying it into the immigration issue as well? We all, at this point in time when there's a pandemic, it's not the time to look at who is an immigrant from who isn't, which states are taking in more immigrants from which state isn't, but but just to be humane and look at who needs help, how can we help them? And after that, going forward, look at, well, how we can address tax issues, right? And this whole indemnification thing, it's just painstaking that we have to be going over these issues, repeatedly. Like, when is it going to stop? When is he going to just stop, like, hitting out, lashing out, being childish, and just like deal with the situation for what it is right now, a pandemic? And as I had said earlier, until we've moved past that, then deal with all these other issues that some people actually consider petty, right? We have one person here who said that majority of red states have upside budgets and are reliant on the federal government. We need to tax the 1% and corporations to balance our budget that you, meaning the government or the president, has mismanaged and COVID-19 exposed. Again, you're going to cost people's lives so companies can profit without legal repercussion. And that's exactly what it is, right? When you're saying don't tax capital gains and all these others, what exactly are you saying? Again, the 1% will just prevail and then everybody else suffer as a consequence, the other, 99%. That makes absolutely no sense. So, Mr. President, what you're being urged to do, and you actually need to listen to your followers, right? Or you need to listen to the people that you're serving. We're not serving you, you are serving us. And at some point, you need to remember that, right? Some people say that the New York governor is using this crisis to get a bailout. Whether he's using the crisis to get a bailout or not, the point is there is a crisis. Focus on the crisis at hand. If you want to lambast him afterwards about it, that's fine. But just be sensitive to the time that we're in, to the situation that we're in, and address the issues that we are facing at this point in time, right? As I mentioned earlier, New York sends $22 billion more to the federal government each year, right? Than it actually gets back, right? So how do you say that at this time, well, go fend for yourself? When they were sending their money to you, they were fending for themselves and feeding you. So why not help them out right now? Put aside the governor, put aside the leaders, look at the people in the state, the ones who grind on a daily basis to get that money to you every year during tax time, right? We have someone here who said, I've lived in both New York and California most of my life. I have zero use for red states. I don't think we've ever been united. Can we form a more perfect union without the red states? Now, this is someone who is lashing out at the states. And again, this is what we get sometimes when we politicize times of crisis, right? But it's not time to do that. It's time to just have humanitarian outlook across the board. Okay? So, Mr. President, we're just asking you, just stop putting the careless tweets out there. Save them for another time, right? This is not the time for it. Okay? I have, there's something else that the president mentioned about indemnification, and in the indemnification provision allocates the risk and expense in the event of a breach, default, or misconduct by one of the parties, right? And so basically, we're saying that any state, once you've come to an agreement, if a state reneges on whatever was agreed to, they would basically be on their own. They'd be guilty of misconduct. Yes, those are all good points. But again, those are things to look into later, not right now. Deal with the pandemic. Just recently, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, she said that she will not be supporting an additional coronavirus assistance package unless it includes money, right, for the local governments and for the states, right? She also said that one of the 4 rescue packages passed so far did include about $200 billion for those entities. But the money was aimed at helping to pay for new expenses related to the coronavirus. It didn't address the severe revenue shortfalls those governments are now starting to see as shuttered economies reduce the collection of income and sales tax. So what we're encouraging to the state leaders to do as well is to ensure that the money that they get actually go to what it is supposed to go to, and to really, you take the money and deal with the more pressing issues, but not just give it out to people. If you deal with the pressing issues, then you can help the economy to recover faster. You can actually to be reopened more quickly, right, and safely, we must say. Because one of the things that the president seems to have been pushing is for the states to be reopened quickly. So he's putting pressure on those who are less financially viable at this time to reopen their states, because if they're not going to get financial assistance, they will have no choice but to reopen their states. That's not the way to go about it. We want to open quickly, but we also want to reopen safely. Again, so again, you're watching Depth, Not Just Headlines with Deborah Anderson. I'll keep you updated as these matters arise. And just a reminder that this episode is brought to you by Ear Kitchen, specialized dining services coming from a kitchen near you sooner than you think.